Hi everyone, in this video we're gonna learn and master everything about React table and how to use this awesome library to render dynamic data from the API, do sorting and filtering and much more on all of this video. So after this video you will be able to basically go ahead, use your API, use React table without any complexities, and you will understand every single piece about how React table works and how the state updates and how you actually can grab your data from the API and render it straight into tables using the help of React table. So after this one, this is what we're gonna be creating the whole video. So you can create this awesome like table in here with Tailwind CSS, and we're gonna do like filters in here, excludes in here, for example, price, like you can put Samsung, it works. There's actually sorting works in here on the description, the pricing, sorting works, and we're gonna display this data. It's gonna dynamically display from an API, which is a fake store API exclusive. Those is the clothing and everything. So it's a store API as Amazon, and we grab the data asynchronously and in real time, grab the data, just render it through like React tables without any issues, and we can have all the awesome stuff in here. Plus, we're also going to implement this edit button in here, which of course a custom actions button that you can include, and of course you can do it with all of that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and get started, and here I already actually set up the actual projects and created that. I use, as always, create React app CLI to basically set up the project and just create that. And one quick notice, so I'm using here Tailwind. So I've already set up Tailwind with this project, with the create React app projects, and Tailwind is now working with processing and all the CSS and everything. All the properties are working properly and it's being processed properly. So if you want to use Tailwind as I do, I'm not going to go cover that. You can go and Google out how to use CRA or create React app with Tailwind. You're going to find a lot of guides out there. It's pretty simple basically, so you can just look at it and you can figure it out. Okay, so I already did that. I'm going to use this in here with some components basically, and we can just go ahead and get started with that. So let's start by installing the needed dependencies, or what packages and libraries we're going to be needing throughout the whole video. So first, we're going to start with installing the most important part, which is the React table. So the React table is actually the library. It's a hooks library. It's not like a UI library or a framework or anything. It's just like a hooks library that gives us the functionality to have tables and everything. It's not going to render anything in the UI. It's not providing you with, already rendered UI or CSS or styling or anything like that. Nada. So everything is just like a functionality, hooks. You can power up your table. And this is where the power comes from. It's just like so powerful because it just provides that one thing, and it just focuses on it, and it provides you with awesome functionality and awesome hooks to use on your React components. So first, as I said, install React table, and we're also going to need Axios. Of course, you might also need stock components, and as I said before, we already installed Tailwind. I'm not going to go through the process again. So that's basically what we're going to be needing throughout the whole video in here, and most importantly is actually the React table. Now if we jump into the page for the React table in here, we got reacttable.tech or tenstack.com, if I'm spelling that right, and this is the main page. This one is being used by tons of developers, companies, just relying on this for their table management because it's so powerful and it's super flexible, so you can use it however you want and in any way you want basically. So that's the point about it, and you can use it. And to get started, obviously just go and get started, or you can go to the docs and it's going to give you plenty of stuff. So this is a headless UI library, which means it doesn't come with UI, it doesn't come with rendering. It just gives you the utility, as I said before. It just gives you the functionality inside of functions and hooks, so you can use them right out of the bat. Okay, pretty sweet. Now let's jump into installation and setting up that. We already did the installation. That's simply what it is. And here on the quick start, you can actually take a look on how to quick start that, and you can see it's pretty simple actually. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to start actually creating something like this. I'm going to create a pretty simple table and just show you how to do that. And of course, we're going to make sure that we grab data dynamically. And what I mean by dynamically is just go to the API, fetch the data. So pretty sure any application has to interact somehow or some way with an API. So in this one, we're going to interact with a free API, a store API, and we're going to grab the data from it, and we're going to dynamically render that data on the table without explicitly saying what the data has. So that just like the API is going to tell us what the data is and what are the columns and the headers and all the sort of stuff, and we're just going to directly render those kind of things. Okay, so this is the React application I'm going to start with, and let's go ahead and get started. I already run yarn start, so we are good basically to go in here. There's no issues with that. So let's start by creating a new component that takes care of rendering the products, or the list of table, or basically the table we're going to be like having all the data inside. So for this, I'm going to do components, and inside of that I'm going to create another folder. I'm going to name it products. Okay, and this component is actually going to be responsible for rendering the table of products. So you can imagine this as a store, as an Amazon store, an eBay store, whatever that kind of thing. So I'm going to create a new one, and this is going to be the index.jsx. So as always, we start by importing React and what we need from React library, and I'm going to export the main function for that. So this is going to be products, just as simple as that, and it's going to have a couple of props which we'll probably not use anyway, and that's it, what we need. Like what you can probably see already, I've already created some styles in here. So there's actually already a Tailwind styles in here with like the out container and the title and everything. So in this video, I'm not going to worry much about the styles. I'm not going to walk you through how to create the styles, because I'm pretty sure 99% of you guys know how to basically set up a table and what the styles needed and the CSS styles. So I'm not going to go into these details. That's why I chose Tailwind in the first place, because it gives us all the utility we need and all the classes we need. Just hook and play, and that's it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to probably just going to copy the components in here, and maybe I can walk you through, but they are pretty simple. So the components in here are just like the CSS components, or the styled Tailwind components, which is a table and the table head and table row, table header, table body, and the table data, and the button, which all like TD and T-body and TH, those kind of stuff, those kind of bare minimum important elements for creating or setting up a table, basically. So that's what we need just to get started with, and those are pretty simple. Okay, now let's go ahead and get started, and start by grabbing the data from the API. So I'm pretty sure this is the first step. I'll have an API, and I want to grab the data from the API. So how am I supposed to start? So first, you need to hold the data on a particular state, right? So this is the most simple part, is using a use state. And I want to use the use state in here. I want to auto import this separately from React's library. Okay, this is the use state. It starts as an empty array. So that's what we want to start with. Now next, I want to go ahead and create a function that allows us to fetch the data that we want. So I'm going to name this like fetch products. You can probably come up with a better name, but yeah, this looks good already for me. All right, now let's go ahead and double check what is the API we're going to be actually like going and checking. So there's this API called fakestoreapi.com, and we're going to grab the products from. So this fake store API just gives you a fake API for accessing the stored data. And what I mean by stored data is like, I don't know, men's jeans, or anything like clothing, electronics, like TVs and monitors and, whatever. Just basically, just like you can imagine this as the Amazon API. So I'm going to grab data from. So if you send, I'm using in here, I'm trying to send a GET request to the API, and there you go. This is the response, and it's coming up with all of these data. So the data in here includes like the ID, the title, the price, description, category, image, and rating of that particular product. So this is just a dummy data we can use to render on the table. So that's what we're going to be doing. So we want to try to grab this data, and we're going to grab it dynamically, as I said before, from the API, and directly just do some manipulation of this data, save it on the state, then directly from that state, we're going to use React table to render it on the table. Like pretty sick, right? So let's go ahead and try to do that, and React table is going to help us a lot throughout the process. So for doing this, we need to know like what we exactly have in here. So we just double check what it is. So you can use Postman or whatever other HTTP client to check it. I'm using here Thunder client from VS Code. So that's pretty good. Now let's jump. Let me go ahead and copy the URL that I'm going to just like to send a request to. And here I'm going to just like start the response equals await Axios, and make sure to import Axios, of course, and just put in the URL you want. Now, if there's any errors, I want to catch out the error with console log. Pretty sweet, right? And also I want to make sure that if the response, like if it's valid, we can say console log products are products, And let me just go ahead and extract the products on top of here. So product equals response dot data. Okay, and last but not least, we need to populate the state, so we can do set products equals products. All right, now let's go ahead and call this function on the use effect. And if you're wondering why I'm using the use effect in here, it's basically because it provides us with a hook on did mount. So after the component is mounted, this particular callback of the use effect is going to be called for us, and we need to call the fetch product so the component knows that, oh, after it has been mounted and everything, I want to go ahead and fetch the components or fetch the product, and that's what's going to happen right over there. Alright, now last but not least, we want to render something. So let's just render something dummy for now, hello world or something, and just to test if the API works or not and what data we're going to get. Alright, so I'm going to go to the up.js, I'm going to try to render products, and I'm just going to put it right there. That looks pretty sweet. Tailwind is not defined, yeah, because we haven't imported that, so I'm going to use auto imports powers of VS Code, and that's what's going to happen. Alright, so if I access the console, going and do console products, we got 20 different products, and this is what we need to access, and yeah, already works with the API and everything. So that's pretty good spot. We're actually in a good place, and now we can start actually manipulating this kind of stuff in order to get started with this. Okay, so let's go ahead and put these kind of things in here, and let's go ahead and use the React table. So for the table API, what we need to use is actually go ahead and access and grab the table instance. And this, we can use the use table hook from the React table. So remember, this use table hook is being imported from the React table instance right here, and this one needs to take an object of data that we want to, like, you know, display and everything, and the table instance in here is going to be returned for us. Then we can use this table instance to access more data and actually provide our table and make it dynamic. So let me explain in a second. So I've got in here a pretty good example. So let's go ahead and try to put those. This use table is going to need two parameters that are very important, which are the data, which is the data you grab from the API, the actual data objects or the array of the products, basically. That's where it is. And the next one is actually the columns. And the columns, what they mean by them is actually what columns that you need to render in your table. What are columns is like the ID, for example, the price, for example, an image of that product, and those kind of stuff. So the columns are, of course, like static thing that you want to render on your header. And because we got the API and everything, so we try to put that in a dynamic way. So for this, I'm going to just go in and give you an example. So let's say we want to have some data. So you always, and this is a pretty good advice, you always want to use memoized data. And what I mean by memoized data is it's not like memorized, it's memoized. And React memoization, basically, it just provides you with a way to cache the data if the data didn't change. So on every single render, if the data didn't change from the previous render, React won't worry about like go ahead and doing that process again. It's just going to save you a couple of like seconds and processing time, and it's going to skip it right off the bat because the data hasn't changed in the first place. So that's the point of all of that. So I'm going to try to access this. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to copy this particular object, and let's see how this does. So we want to grab the data. I'm going to do use memo, which is the function that allows us to do memoization. And for this, I'm going to return an array, which of course is going to represent the data objects. And I'm just going to return this one. So I'm going to just like copy paste them. I'm going to just like return 3 of those. All right. And you got the data in here. Now let's go ahead and have the columns as I said before. Now const columns, and what I mean by columns, as I said before, I'm going to do use memo again, and for use memo, this should return an array. So columns and the data both are arrays. Now for columns in here, it uses a specific structure that the React table follows. So if you're interested about the other fields, I'm not going to cover all of them. You can go and check out the React table documentations to check out more of these kind of columns that you probably need to manipulate if you want to go like into the advanced level. Okay, so for the header in here, you got something like the header, and the header in here tells it like which or what is the title of the column that you want to display. You can display whatever, for example, an ID, and here the second one is the accessor. Now the accessor here could be a function or it could be a property. So if you provide a string, it's going to access the property from the data. So for example, in here, this is the ID property. So you need to provide the accessor in here the same field name in here or same key of that particular object or key of that particular field. You can call it whatever, but you got the points. So we need to use the ID in here in order to grab us the value of that particular ID. So let's say I want to do this ID. Let me go and copy paste that real quick. I'm going to render just, I think a couple. I'm going to do ID, and I'm going to do second price. Now for price, go ahead and grab me the price, and last but not least, I'm going to do title, okay? And title, I want to go in and access the title because it's called title, and this one is called title, price, okay? Now for this, I need to provide columns and data. Sweet. Now the table instance in here is going to give us everything that we need to work with. We don't have to worry about doing any of that sort of stuff. And we need to actually extract some data from that table instance. So I can do table instance. And first, we're going to need like the get table props, which is we're going to use later on to just like provide props to our elements. So this is how React table works. It doesn't care about like how you render it. It just gives you the full flexibility and full freedom on how you render your table, how you manage them, and sort of stuff. But what it takes from is actually just gives you like those inner props, those inner functions. So you can call these functions and it gives you the props, and the props are going to be passed through this element and they can control the elements. This way you can control the rendering, you can control how elements behave, but of course React Table is going to provide you with all of that in just like a simple, awesome API. So that's what I love about it. So the get table props in here, pretty sweet. I'm going to use also the get table body props. I'm going to also do the header groups, and the header groups in here meaning that what are the groups of these headers, and this is what the header groups are. Just like this particular array. For now, we already got a single array, but if you got multiple arrays, you're going to have multiple header groups if you want to use that. And next in here, we can have rows of data, of course, and we got this prepare row function, which allows us to prepare a row for rendering. And yeah, so we can use that for now. There's tons of other properties we can access, but for now, this should do the job perfectly. Okay, now let's go and render our table. I'm going to use our custom made component just to make it look absolutely good. All right, so I'm going to do in here table, and first we need to provide the first props that we need, which is the get table props. And this one should go ahead and return the props, and of course make sure to use the 3 dots in here so you can extend these table props, and make sure this one, this particular expression in here, this get table props, should be the last one. So if you want to add other props, you can add them here, and just make sure that you add this one last because you want to like React table to override whatever comes before that. So make sure to do that. The next thing in here, I'm going to have the table head, and Copilot in here is helping a lot as always. But yeah, thank you Copilot. Here I can use the header groups. So for now, we already got a single header group as I said before because we have only a single array. So we can do that mapping and header group. Yeah, where is that? Okay, this is kind of crazy. So we can return the table row now. And for the table row, we can also just go ahead and do like the header groups, and the header group, the single header group in here can get us the props for that particular header group. So get header group props, and this what we need as well. So always need to pass in the props just to pass in the functionality from the table or React table down to the components. And the next one in here, we also want to like do the header group mapping. So I want to do header group dot map. So we can access that. So we can access a column, and I can go ahead and access all of these. Now for that, we want to also access the table header. So for the table header, we can do is basically like we can use the table header in here, which is our data or where the table heads is going to exist. So this is where we want to render the actual data. So I can do table header, and here it needs some props. So I can do column dot get basically the table header. So get header props. Okay. And this is a function, so I need to do the 3 dots in here just to extend wherever comes afterward. And here we can use the column. So for this particular one, what we want to do is actually go in and do column. And there's this function called the render. Now the render function here provides you like what the type of field that you want to render. And this is just like an agnostic thing from this. And the render function is like you tell it, oh, I want to grab this property. So this is what the render means. So for the render in here, you pass in the name of the property that you want to render. For our case, we got this header property. You can basically have other custom properties, and you can just like tell that custom property name in here, and it would work perfectly the same. All right. So I want to go ahead and do header and make sure this is a capital because this is a capital. So you want to match up both of these to work fine. And that should look absolutely gorgeous. Okay, we got the table head. Now, the next, is the table body. Now for the table body, we also gonna need to pass in some props for that. So get table body props, pass that down. The next thing in here is actually we're gonna use rows. Now for rows, we need to access the row, and yeah, we need to access the row in here. And for the row in here, what we want is actually first to prepare the row. So I need to get rid of these. I need to replace them like that. I can do prepare row. And for this one, we can call this function. This, what all it does is just prepares for us a row. It adds like the missing data and everything, just like prepares a row for rendering. So you need just to make sure to call that before you render any row data. Okay? Pretty sweet. Now we can access the row, we can access the cells, and the cells are these small, teeny, tiny details that we want to render. You can like imagine a cell is just like that little column. Each cell, that's what it is. So just like it's a small cell. So you need to access the cells. You need to use the map function in here, and of course make sure to return that. Otherwise, you won't render for us. And I can do cell. Maybe you can access the index of that cell. Okay, sorry. And we can finally go ahead and render that. So we can use the table data. And for the table data in here, we can make sure that we grab the actual props. So as I said before, table or React table is all about passing the right props to the elements, so we would behave exactly how we want it to be. All right. And here for the cell, you can just go ahead and call the render function as we did before. And here you pass it the field that you want to render. If we take a look on what is the field that we want to render for that, is actually the cell, because for this columns, it has a hidden default field that is, or default property called the cell, which is like this, and it's a function. It takes the actual row as a parameter and it returns whatever GSX that you want to render. So this is by default, but you can of course override that. We will see how that works later on. But for now, we only want to just like go ahead and render the cell property, and we are good to go. So remember, this render function always works with the columns object in it. So whenever or whatever you define inside of that particular object, you can use it with that render function right over there. Sweet. Now everything is working in here. Let's go ahead and see the page. The header group .map is not a function, so there seems to be something wrong with this. So this is called the header groups. So this should basically look as a header group, then header groups. Yeah, I'm missing the headers in here. So you need to access the headers of the header group, as we did access in here the cells on the cells group. Okay, or basically on the rows. And there you go. Has already been rendered. So let me just go in and refresh that real quick. And it goes cells update maximum. Okay, something was wrong with this. Maybe we can go ahead and move this fetch method to the last one so we would work properly. Okay, there you go. Now I can go ahead and refresh that. And for the use memo in here, we totally forgot about passing this as an empty array. Otherwise, it just keeps triggering state changes that you don't basically want. Okay, so just like at the else parameter, you want to do like an empty array, which means only do it once if that changes. But we don't have something that is going to change, obviously, so we're not going to do anything. And there you go. We got a table in here. We got the title. We don't have anything else in here, so that's why it just has nothing, because we have defined nothing from the columns. But yeah, it works perfectly. Now let's go ahead and use this particular one, and we're going to use it with our API. The API you see in here that grabs the data. I'm going to do it dynamically on how to render all of these kind of stuff in a really good way. So for doing this dynamically, it basically all it needs to happen is actually you have to like put the columns and the data in a particular manner. So I'm going to create a new functions. I'm going to keep those. I'm going to keep those as they are, so we can just like have them for reference for now. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call this products. So products data. And this one is going to be an use memo again. So always you want to use memoization. And for this, all it's going to return is actually the actual products, because this is the data, the real data that we want to pass. And yeah, you don't want to play around with this. So the data is pretty simple. Now when it comes to columns, it's quite tricky. So we need to just take care of that. So we can have products columns. For this, we can use memo. So yeah, Copilot is a little bit... Okay, so let me go ahead and disable Copilot for now. I don't know why it's being for JavaScript React. Okay, so it has been disabled. Okay, thank you, Copilot. Now let's go ahead and see what we actually can do for this. Now for this, it's going to basically return. So what we want to access is actually access a single product. Okay, so we want to have this as a product, so it changes whenever the products change. So we can just have this on the dependency list right over there. Now, what I mean in here, I'm going to access the first product, and I'm going to grab all the fields of that particular product. So if you imagine this one in here, so it has a field called ID, title, price, and this kind of stuff. So what I want to do is actually loop through this object, loop on every single key, and we grab the first key name in here, the field name as ID and title, and put them on objects as they are valued like this. Header, it's called ID, and then accessor called an ID, and you can manipulate that. So that's what we want. That's why we want to access the first one. So I want to make sure if products first. Okay, sweet. Then I can do object dot keys, and I can do products 0. So I can access the 0th one. First, I can filter. So I want to get rid of one thing. This is going to be called products. So I want to make sure that products dot. So let me just show you what is happening here. So I want to do like products. Or the key of that should be key, right? That shouldn't be a product. So I want to make sure key doesn't equal to rating, because I want to get rid of the rating. I don't want to use that. It's an object and it's just going to make things complicated. I completely ditch that. Now I can use the map one. I can have key, and for the map, we can tell it what to return and what not to return, basically. Now for this case in here, I want to make sure, when I use that, so I'm going to just go in and return a header. And the header is going to be the key. And for the actual accessor is just basically going to be a key too, because that's what it does. The accessor only needs the actual key of that, and it's going to take care of all of this kind of stuff. So we don't have to worry about this much. Having a kind of, I think I have an issue with this expression. So the map here, the key should be returning that. Yeah, we do have some weird issue in here. Now, if product's not ready yet, just like return an empty array or something, and we shouldn't do that here. We should do that right over there, I believe. But yeah, let me double check that. So here it needs a parentheses, otherwise it won't work. Now let's go ahead and replace the columns with the products columns, and the data in here with products data. Sweet. Now we got both of these. Let's gonna see what's happening. There seems to be an issue already, and basically here, because we're missing an S, so that should fix it. And also notice that on this table body, we're actually missing a row, so we're not returning a row, which is quite bad thing to do. So we don't want to do that. We want to just like return a row. Then actually, like after preparing that, we want to go ahead and do like return table row, because we want every single row there should return a table row for it. Otherwise it won't work for us. And so I think we can just have this one right here, remove that. And for the table row as well, we're gonna need some props to get from. So we can get row props. So we need to pass in those props to the rows, otherwise they won't work with us. So that's what we do in there. And yeah, so that should be pretty good enough. If we do it, there you go. So we got all the rows, all the data, and imagine all the data is being actually grabbed from the API. So if you check that real quick, this is the whole thing, and the whole thing is happening dynamically. So we're not touching much of pieces. We're not caring about how the actual data structure is on the API, this kind of stuff. It just works, and it works absolutely perfectly. So that is absolutely tremendous. And we all have actually rendered all of that data in a dynamic way. So I can add a little bit of just teeny tiny detail to look the table look a little bit better, which is we can go ahead and have that. So let me just go and put this table thing. I think I can put it on the side here, and that one I can put it from the other side. And just for you to see that in action. Pretty sure I'm gonna have this overflow thingy, which sucks, but we still want to see that in action. So what I want to here is actually have a class name. Okay, so I want to add the function just to double check if this is an even or not. So I want to show like two rows beneath each other's in a different color. So this would look absolutely cool, just like something optional, but that would be really cool. So I'm gonna do is even, and in here I'm gonna have like the index. and for, of course, calculating any kind of even number or not. So for that particular function, you have just to do the index and module 2 equals to 0 or not. Okay, that's the basic part in here. So I want to check out if the index is even or not. So I'm gonna have class name after that. So I'm gonna do is even. I'm gonna pass in the index, and the index from the top there. So if it is even, what I'm gonna basically do is actually pass in actually a class name to that, so it would work perfectly. Okay, so I'm gonna do background green 400. So I'm gonna just change the background. I'm also gonna do a background opacity of something like 10% or something. Okay, and here, if not, I'm just not gonna turn anything. And there you go. So if you notice that already, just like every single one is quite different than the other. So we got this greenish kind of look to it, and it kind of looks sick, absolutely. So I love that one. It looks really good just to have this greenish look into it. So you might want to go in and increase that a little bit if you want to. Maybe if you're not doing here like 40 or something. There you go. It looks a little bit more. I can have 30. Yeah, I think 30 will do the job. So it looks absolutely great. I love that. So just like a quick CSS trick, just to make the table look absolutely stunning. Now, let's say for our case, for our table, I'm pretty sure a lot of you what we want is actually to add a custom action button on the actual table. So what I mean by this, imagine that you want to like each row to have like an edit button at the end or a delete button or something that, of course, the user can click and just immediately go ahead to the edit page or just click and delete that particular row. So you might want to add that, and table or React table in here provides us with an awesome functionality. We can just easily add that using the table hooks. So for that to work, what I can do is actually go and create a new instance, or basically a new function. I'm going to name this table hooks. Okay, and this function takes a hooks parameter, which is like what is included inside of the table hooks or all the other hooks that are initialized with the React table, basically. Now what we want to here is actually access all the hooks. I want to access all the visible columns. So I'm going to just go and do visible columns, all of them. I want to push a new thing to these columns. All right. So for that, it's going to give us the previous columns as a parameter. And here it's going to give us the opportunity to just push whatever comes afterward. Now first, I want to have the columns because I want the columns to come first, like from the right to left, or basically from left to right. So, and the last thing in here on the right, I want is actually the edit button. So that's what I'm trying to do in here. And after the columns in here, I want to add a new button, which is just a new object. I'm giving an ID, for example, edit. And the header in here, which is the button name, which is edit, which is going to be displayed on top in here. All right. And the last thing here, I want to just like cell, and this is the property I was talking about. The cell property in here takes an object and it can extract from it the actual row. You can extract the value or something. And for this one, it's just actually what you want to render for that particular thing. And here you want to return something that you want to render on that particular column or on that particular cell. So for this, I want to render a GSX. Of course, I want to render a button. So I want to use my button in there on top, and I want to render that. So for the button, I want to do like, for example, I want to render inside of that, for example, let's say edit. So the user can click on it, and I want to have like an on click. So once the user is clicking on that, I can do, for example, an alert, editing, and it can, for example, do, access the row. Then it can do values.price. So I can access the actual row that has been clicked, and I can display the price of that particular product on that particular row that has been clicked. So just to make sure that that works and everything. So to use this particular one, to use this this particular table hooks in here, so I can provide it on the table instance. After that particular object, I can provide hooks. So table hooks, and I can just provide it right over there. And there you go. Just by saving that, we already got the edit button in here. And there you go, it works. So if we try to click on that, we got editing, and it's just not working because we need to do a plus button on alerts. Sorry for that, guys. And I do edit. There you go. We got editing, $22. Edit another one, $15. And yeah, it works. Absolutely. If you just look at it and everything, yeah, it absolutely works. You can take a look on the values in real time in here, just clicking 59.99 cents. It works. So if you want to do this particular one, you can do it using React table. It's pretty sweet. Now, if you want to add sorting to the table, so let's say we want to sort a table by column. And what I mean by this, you want to, like, for example, I'm pretty sure you've seen a lot of examples like this, a lot of tables around, you know, the globe and internet, where you click on the actual header in here and you can just like sort ascending order, or in descending order, you can just like get it or toggle it back to the default one, which is, you know, as default, they start from ID 1 to whatever the last ID it is. So, well, that's what we want to do. And likely for us, for basically React table, and it provides us with this awesome functionality without actually much of overhead. We can just go ahead and figure that out. It's pretty simple to implement just using the hooks. And that's what I use, or I love using about React table, because it provides you these hooks. You can even use third-party hooks that you can basically, it's blazingly fast and it's super cool. Just plug and play and you don't need to worry about that much. So for this, I can go ahead and use the use sort by hook. Just go ahead and make sure you import this from React table. Again, I'm importing all of these from React table in here, like the use table and the use sort by. All of them are hooks from the React table. Okay, now this hook is going to provide us with a little bit of functionality that we're going to probably just go ahead and use. Now for this one, we need to go to the table header. And here we're actually rendering the actual table header. So there is other stuff. So if you take a look on this get header props, it takes actually a prop getter. So what type of props we need? For this, I'm going to tell it, oh, let's go ahead and provide this with some actual sort props, because we can do that. So I can go ahead and do column.get and go ahead and get sort by toggle props. There's other props actually, but that's what we want to do in here. And that's for this particular case. That's all I'm going to try to do in here. Okay. Must have a parent element. I don't know why that is. Okay. Just a parenthesis. Now what I want to render as well. So alongside the header, alongside this, for example, a category, I want to render a caret or an arrow basically just tells us what is the order. Either it is ascending or descending, or just like by default if there's no error basically. For that, I'm going to just use some emojis in here just to make sure that we do. Now I can access the column, and the column in here has a really cool property that allows us to check if that one is sorted or not, and the type of sorting, of course. So I'm going to do like is sorted, which is a boolean. So if it is sorted, I'm going to go in and check that again. I'm going to do is column is sorted descending. So if it is sorted and descending, what I'm going to do? I want to render this arrow. So let me just grab this arrow real quick. It's the pointing down arrow, which means we're actually in a descending order. And if it's not, basically we want to make sure that we are in an ascending order. All right. So just make sure to pass that in. And last but not least, if nothing, I'm not gonna basically render anything, just render an empty string there. Sweet. Now let's go and see if that works or not for us. Make sure we go and return that. There you go. Now it's actually changed my mouse cursor into like the pointer. And if I click this, we see that, and actually it has been sorted. Let me just gonna show you that. And the category, we can just do that in a descending way, or we can just toggle it back. For the price, you can check that out. Like start from $7.95 and it just goes all the way up, and that means that has been sorted. If we do that, it starts from the highest price and it goes down. And of course, you can toggle it back. It's the same with the ID. We can do it, the title, basically any column, and that basically works as charming as it could be. Of course, the edit we can't do it because this is a custom button from us. But yeah, anything else, it can happen and it can work as good as it would be. Sweet. And one other thing I noticed, actually, I don't want to just go in and display an image as just this URL. I want to display a real image. So when we're actually mapping the data in here, I can go in and check if the key equals an image. And this is, of course, you need to know the type of properties you're getting from the API. Otherwise, you won't be able to handle that properly, okay? So if it is an image, what we can do is actually return a custom object for us. This custom object can include, for example, header is going to be the key. The accessor is going to be the key. And we can have a custom cell. The custom cell here, remember, it returns to us whatever like the GSX you want to render. For this one, I will render a custom image. So serve this custom image with an src of the value, and this value basically variable is actually this. It includes basically the URL. So the URL is the actual value. Okay, sweet enough. We got the src, we got everything. And yeah, we might want to also go ahead and do some maximum width. There's also that. I want to make sure I want to do like, oh, I want a maximum width of the image just to be 100 pixels and not more of that. Okay, or maybe it's going to do this 50. Yeah, okay, good. Now if we save that, and this should load. There you go. We got that. I wanna have this a little bit bigger than 50. If we refresh that, I think, yeah, because this is responsive, so that's why you see it right here. But if you just like, you know, make that a little bit bigger, it looks much bigger and much better. Now we got the images all sorted out for us. So let me just get it back to the place. Now, the last thing in here we want to do is actually introduce React table filters or global filters. And what I mean by filters is you can imagine this as filtering the data of the table any way you want. And this is the most common way you can probably use this is actually using or throughout a search bar. So if you're familiar with search bar on a React or any table, you can probably use that in this particular case. And you can use global filters to filter the table data and just show the data that, of course, the user has types on that input or search input. So that's what I want to do in here. And for doing this, I want to do it globally, of course. So you can put anything and you can go ahead and search on all of the columns, anything that matches on any of the columns that are being rendered. It's just basically going to search for that and it's going to like filter it out and it's going to show you that. All right. So that's what I'm trying to do in here. And I'm going to create a new component, or basically I'm going to go in and it's like inside of the same component in here, inside of the projects. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to name it global filter. You can basically name it whatever, but I'm just going to do it like as a global filter. Okay. So for this, it has a couple stuff as well. It has some CSS I already created just to make the search bar look a little bit better. But yeah, that won't be a problem for us. Just I'm going to copy paste this because we are not focusing on this kind of stuff. And also I need to make sure that I import Tailwind from that. And we are basically good to go. All right, sweet. So I'm gonna go and export global filter, and this particular global filter is gonna take a couple of props you're gonna need. So these props are let me just gonna introduce this function. So the props are basically you might want to like okay, just I don't know why this is just being going in red like that's okay. So that should work. For these, what we need is actually the pre-global that already has been rendered, so filtered rows. So this is actually the rows that are already being filtered and everything. Also, I'm gonna like introduce the global filter. And last but not least, I'm gonna do like set global filter, so you could set and change the global filter settings and, you know, configuration and everything, all the current filter that is going on. Okay, so we can have that this way. For this, we can actually basically access quite a lot of stuff. Now, let's say I want to do first is actually access the count of how many rows we already got before filtering. So you can tell the user, oh, you're actually going to filter this amount of rows. For us, we got 20, just a cool feature to have. So we can access the global filtered rows and we can access the length because this is actually an array. Sweet. The next one, I can go ahead and have this in a state and I can do value and set value. I can do use state and I can make sure that this starts as an empty array, or basically because we want to have this as a global filter. So I can have this starts as a global filter passed in throughout the props already. The next one, we got another thing, which is the onChange. Now the onChange in here takes actually the value that you want to do, but it takes it in a different way. We want to debalance this, so we want to do this asynchronously. You don't want to filter right off the bat. You don't want to, like, when the user types something in, like right on the first keystroke, you go and filter. You want to just like wait and hold down a little bit. So let the user finish typing, then you can basically start looking on the table. This is much better. It's much better in terms of performance and user experience. So you always need to think about debouncing. And likely for us, React table provides us with an awesome function or hooks that allows us to do exactly that. So I can do use async debounce, and this is just already a function in here. So you can go ahead and use it this way, and just like it gives you like usual debounce thing. So it takes the value, of course, and you got that kind of like return for you. Yeah, we need to return that because it's an object, and it can go and call the set global filter. So I want to set the value or undefined if there is nothing. So if anything other than value has been set, we can do that. And here you can specify the default wait timing. And for example, I want to wait 200 seconds or 200 milliseconds. You can do like 300, I think that would be better. Sweet. Now let's go and render the thing. I'm going to do search container first. Second in here, I'm going to do the search text, like what you want to type in as a label. For example, search and 2 dots. And the search input, or basically just the input. That's what I've named it. And for this one, for example, it takes the value or empty string. It takes, for example, on change. So you can pass that in straight to. So it takes an e value, and here you can tell it like what you want to do. So for example, we want to set the value right at the bat. And why setting the value? Because we want to update the value of the input in here as soon as the user types, but we want to also wait on the on change. So that's why I'm going to do e.target.value. And the next in here, I'm going to trigger the on change so we can change the filter data outside of that. So I'm going to also pass in the same target value, which is the value of that particular input. Sweet. And last but not least in here, I want to have a placeholder, and I want to do on the placeholder, let's say I want to go and do like something count records. So like shows the user, tells the user, oh, you got this many count of records that you're going to filter through. Sweet, right? Now let's go ahead. What left for us is actually just to call this filter and actually make it work for us. So here we need to actually do a use global filter, which is as well imported from the React table. So make sure you call this before both of these, because filters comes first, then hooks comes after that on the function parameters. Sorry. Okay. And here I want to render something. So I want to go ahead and use a React fragment in here, just a container. And right before that, I want to go and do global filter, and I can do like passing everything. So the pre-global filtered rows in here, I can go in and grab that, and you can also grab the set global filter, and I can grab the state. Now this state value, or this state variable, is going to tell us like what is the current state of the whole table. So if you want to like know anything about the table or control anything, this state is going to tell you the truth about the state or the actual state of that particular table. Okay, sweet. Now we can access those. So for this we can do where is that? So pre-global and the set global filter, and the last one is actually the global filter. So you can do state.global filter. Sweet. Now after rendering this, is going to render us I think so. Yeah, we should just like refresh that. There you go. We got here already. So if we want to search, I think we got a typo in search. That should fix it. So we got search. You can search 20 workers, and yes, we already got a 20 workers. So let me just give you that. Now let's say I want to search. Let's say I want to search for a monitor or something. Do a monitor. There you go. We got a Samsung 49-inch monitor here. It's a curved monitor in electronics. Just search for that. Let's say I want to search, I don't know, men, and it's going to give us all men's stuff, all men's clothing. It's right here. Let's say I want to search a price, which is like, for example, 22. There you go. We got 22, and basically this is not a price. Maybe there's another number that is 22, and it just like finds that and just shows you that. So that's basically what's happening here. So this is a 22 right here. So you got the point, because this is a global search filter. You don't have to do anything. If you want to have this specific to the price or something, you can have it for that particular price. You can basically like select from the drop down, and you can implement that the way you want it. But the simplest way and the easiest way is actually this, using global filters. And imagine we didn't have like to type a lot of code or do a lot of configuration to do that. React table gave us everything we need, and all we have to do, or all we did basically, is actually provide it with the needed hooks. Simple, right? Straightforward and pretty simple. So hope you guys enjoyed this one, as I enjoyed making it, and hope you actually enjoyed React table. Now you should actually be able to get started with React table. You can just install the React table and start actually rendering the data from a dynamic API without any issues. So you can get started now. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and catch you all hopefully in the next ones.